have those people now.
All right, everyone, this is Chad, and I'm with MBTV. I don't know if you guys can see my screen real quick. Let me fix this. All right, so yeah, welcome to MBTV, and today's topic is INFPs. This has been a show in the waiting. People have asked to have the show come up, so I'm really excited to do this. I'm going to try to keep it punctual, but we have a lot of special guests. There may be some popping in due to life circumstances. They may pop in a few minutes. Trey's slacker right now, and I like to put him on blast. But ultimately, let me get a few things out of the way. The first thing I'd like to get out of the way is I'm going to introduce our guest. We have Olivia. She's an INFP.
Hello.
And we have Daniel, who's an ENFJ.
Greetings, everybody.
Oh my gosh, I'm an ENFJ too.
We have
Sorry, I have to interrupt.
we have Big Hoss, which we can't see him right now. He has a bad connection, but he might pop in and out. Then we have Maribel, who's also a ENFJ. So we got a little bit of dynamic here, and we got one introvert preference person so far. So hopefully more come in and drop in. But when Trey gets here, it's going to be NJ madness. So we're going to try not to gang up on this INFP, and hopefully more INFPs will come in. So that being said, we had no idea what Daniel showed to the camera. But that being said, if you got a few minutes, what we're going to do is I'm going to cover the few basics. To stay updated, make sure you go to the website, mbtvcoach.com. There's a mailing list that lets you know when these live shows are released. So if you haven't joined that list, get on that list. So that way you're aware of what's going on and you can catch every live show, or at least schedule around it, or even participate. And so get on that list and get that done if you're interested in staying updated with us. As far as joining the forum has moved up to almost 1,100 posts in under a month. So that's a major success for MBTV. So there's a lot of stuff going on the forum. I can't even keep up with it. So I'm looking for moderators and people to help balance out the rapid rate in which that forum has grown. So if you guys are interested, like I said, make sure you join the forum. Send me a message on the forum, and I'll work on getting you scheduled out to see if you're looking at doing moderation. I just want you guys to get involved and get in. It's super organized. There's all kinds of different topics, from Socionics to MBTI to personal development to spiritual development. There's all different areas there. So that's absolutely amazing, and we're really proud of that forum. There's also the Slack chat, which there's a link on the website to join the Slack chat. So make sure you go on the website, because all the links are there. The links to the forum, the links are to the Slack chat, which is a little more informal. Those are on the website. But again, the forum is forum.myersbriggs.com. Feel free to join. It's free, and it's actually really entertaining and enjoyable, especially with different subjects, including typing other people, problems you may be having if you're struggling with your type. So. All right, so let me just do a brief round here. Olivia, would you mind introducing yourself and kind of talking about your story as an INFP, and then we'll kind of touch base, and then when Trey pops in, which he will sometime at that point, we'll really get the ball rolling. But hopefully by 8:10, in about 7-8 minutes, we'll start diving into some details about INFP. So if you can make about a 30-second introduction, that'd be awesome, and then we're going to get everybody else introduced.
Okay, well, my story is an INFP. Well, I found out about MBTI like 2 years ago, and it was kind of like, it was when I just left home and I had gone to university, and I was kind of really stuck in a rut, like having a bit of an identity crisis almost, and slightly depressed, I think. And I just came across all this stuff, and it just really helped me grow as a person and get out of that rut, I suppose, and remind me of what like my skills are and my, the things that I can contribute to people, because I'd kind of forgotten that. So.
Okay. And just so you guys know, Olivia is a soldier. She is it's like 2 a.m. in her time zone, and she is just on this call and ready to go. So she's a soldier. We also just had somebody new join, and it's Caitlin, and she's also an INFP as far as I know. And so her camera is sideways, but she's there. We just see her at a sideways angle. So hopefully we'll get that fixed. Otherwise, we're going to tilt our heads and do good stretches here. Yep. So otherwise, yeah, she just fixed it. So Caitlin, welcome. We're glad to have you. So we have 2 INFPs now, and so that way, Olivia doesn't feel quite as ganged up on, and because we had a bunch of NJs earlier. So let's just okay. So anyway, Maribel, please introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit, and keep it to about 30 seconds.
Hi, my name is Maribel, and I am an ENFJ. I'm currently in California, and I'm currently 17 years old. This is my first time, as a part of the MBTV live stream, live call, whatever, Google Hangout, whatever you like to call it. And that's all.
All right, perfect. That was good. And Caitlin, I think we might have lost you for a second. If you come back, that's excellent. I'm going to have Daniel introduce himself.
All right, great. I'm Dan. I'm an ENFJ. I recently have been acquired by MBTV. I'm a life coach and relationship coach. I do a lot of really cool stuff. I have my own YouTube channel called ENFJ Discussions, but now, as you see, I'm partnering with MBTV, and I'm bringing a lot of really great content here. So I'm also here as, I guess, a moderator like Chad and Trey. And, yeah, cool to be here and to meet you guys. Welcome.
All right, so let's get this ball on the road and let's get it rolling here. So we're going to kind of challenge Olivia. We're not going to be too mean, but we're going to really try to dive into her mindset and kind of figure out, what is it like being in the head of an INFP? And kind of why INFPs are so interesting to ENTJs. And now Daniel's sold on the INFP concept as well. So we're going to try to and we're going to try to dive deep into finding out what it is. So Olivia, let me start with asking you this specific question, which is, what struggles have you had being an INFP? What difficulties had you had before you learned about MBTI, and then what brought you to MBTI? You mentioned, you had an identity crisis, but what other struggles, like what classic examples were you like, you read the INFP and you're like, that is so me. What happened? Like, what's the story?
Struggles. I think the biggest one is knowing how to express myself and make myself heard to people. That's like something I've always had trouble with. And one of the biggest things that kind of stood out to me when I first found out about INFP was being really sensitive, especially to criticism. Like, that is something that hit me really hard because I noticed that that's a really bad habit I have of just being really sensitive to that. And since I've learned about it, I've become much better at being able to take criticism and banter and stuff like that. But if you're talking about struggles, then I'd say the biggest one is learning how to express myself properly and not be so shy all the time and quiet and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So, and it's interesting that you said that about trying to figure us out, because my boyfriend's actually an ENTJ, and he says that he's trying to figure me out or something. I don't really understand it, but that's how he seems to see me. So it's kind of funny.
Okay, perfect. Well, see, that's what we talk about. Trey and I think the INFP and the ENTJ combination is a very smooth combination. So that's kind of funny that you're dating an ENTJ, because that's very common for INFPs as well. So that's actually the Kiersey style of pairing. Caitlin, please share your story as an INFP. You look a little happy and go lucky over there, so we'd love to hear what you have to say and kind of what brought you to be INFP and a little bit of some of the struggles you may have encountered as an INFP.
Well, I don't know where you want me to begin. Do you want me to start
Feel free to go as long as you need to go. So.
Okay. Well, I grew up with I had two parents originally. I had 5. I'm the oldest of 5. Trey kind of knows a little bit, but sorry. But anyways, I grew up starting off. My dad, he was really mean to my mom, so I kind of took on the mom role of the rest of the kids, and then there was some other stuff that ended up happening, but ultimately I know everybody works on certain things on their type to be able to become what they are, but for me, I feel like at some point I kind of took on, I had characteristics that more kind of reached, or that more leaned towards an ISFJ, and then later on I started exploring with different things and really opening my mind to different subjects. And with reading, I really like reading, and I don't know, just it was kind of I don't know, I'm just really nervous, I think.
So maybe
we can pass it on, and then we can come back to you if you'd like. No, that's fine.
Maybe you were forced to kind of be an ISFJ in a sense because of what you were raised around.
Yes, exactly. And since I've gotten older, I've realized that I don't really have to take on that mother role as much anymore, because there was a long time where my mom, she was a single mom for like about like 7 years, I think, and so I kind of took on the mommy nanny kind of role, and um, it just made me feel like I had to be more a part of my brothers and sisters' lives more than my mom per se, because my mom's an INTJ, and so she was more focused on work and she was more focused on other stuff, and just yeah. Sorry.
So,
Okay,
so
well,
you had to raise him because your mother wasn't like present, right?
Yeah, pretty much. And then once I got older, I kind of started leaning towards doing my own thing, and I found myself being an INFP.
well, I have a quick question for you, and that question is that you've got the spotlight now because Olivia dropped off. Her connection probably went bad. So you got the spotlight, Caitlin. I'm sorry. And
Oh, okay.
so tell me about being, like you said, almost like forced like an ISFJ to live that ISFJ lifestyle. How did that make you feel being an FI dominant user where you lead with that introverted feeling? How did that make you feel? How did you interpret that way of actually living? Like, what was your feeling going through the time when you were being pressured to be somebody you weren't?
Well, it was a very big, like, I didn't really know who I was, so I was constantly trying to figure out be what would be good to fit me. I ended up getting into a relationship that I didn't want when I was like about 15 or 16, and because I saw everybody else was getting into relationships, and then my mom, she had gotten into a car accident, so I thought that it would be easier to start getting my life together at an early age rather than like waiting a while. And the relationship ended up being really bad because that person ended up trying to make me someone I wasn't either, and it was to make me an ISFJ. Because they wanted me to stay home. They wanted me to have like 4 kids, and I was like, I didn't know how to say no. There was a big part of my life where I didn't know how to say no to things that I didn't want and that I didn't need. And then eventually I was able to break free from that because he stopped going to school, and I kind of ended it over FaceTime.
Okay, so I think we lost her temporarily. So the
Thank the
INFP is,
Lord for FaceTime, though.
FaceTime made that breakup real easy. So we can't ask her questions right now until her connection comes back, but she'll come back shortly. So Maribel, you're a guest on this show. I'd really like to kind of dive into your experience. You said a lot of people you know are INFPs. So what have you noticed? What common traits have you noticed in INFPs that are contrary to what you may read online? Because when I was doing a lot of research about INFPs online and people's interpretation of them, they put them as this soft, willowy pushovers. And in reality, they're not. Like every INFP I've ever known has a strong sense of independence. So
Agreed.
yeah, it's a common stereotype, but that's not the case what I've seen in my experience. I've never met a pushover INFP actually. And so I would like to know your experience with that.
Well, I totally agree with you in that INFPs are not pushovers. Like, at the beginning of high school, I was really close with this one friend, and they're an INFP. And we started our friendship during early 7th grade, so we had known each other really well for years, and she never got mad at me. But then she got mad at me for the first time ever when we were both freshmen in high school. And, well, this is kind of personal, but our relationship ended because when she got mad at me, she physically assaulted me. So, yeah, I don't know how to word myself in a way that wouldn't illustrate INFPs to be violent, because not every INFP is violent. But unfortunately, whenever I hear the words INFP, I think about that one friend I had for about 3 years, because that, unfortunately, is one of my most vivid memories.
Welcome back, Olivia. Maribel, please.
We missed you.
I don't know what happened.
It happens. Connection drops out occasionally. But Maribel, please continue.
That was the end of my story.
That was it?
Well, the thing is, well, it seems to me that most of the people around me are INFPs, and I think that's because I rarely ask people about their Myers-Briggs type. So the people I already know their Myers-Briggs type, it's a majority INFP. I might be surrounded by mostly extroverts. I don't know. It's just because I don't really ask people.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So I did ask you the question of like, when you work with INFPs or you're with INFPs, what have you noticed other than the fact that I brought out the fact that they're not willowy pushovers? What else have you noticed being around so many INFPs that is maybe contrary to stereotypes?
Oh, another INFP I remember really well because she's my older sister. Well, pushover is definitely not one of the first words I would use to describe my older sister. So my older sister is 4 years older than me, and so that means she graduated high school about 4 years ago, 3 years ago, and she goes to this college all the way across the United States, so I never get to see her. And for the past year, she's been doing this, what's it called, study abroad program in Japan. And so I barely got to talk to her within the past 3 years. But I do remember when we were little kids, she'd often take leadership roles, but I don't think that's... It could be because she's an INFP, but I think it's because she's the eldest of 3 children, and typically the oldest child is the most leader-like.
Okay.
I could attest to that.
Come again?
I can attest to that. That's all I have to say.
How many siblings do you have?
3, sorry, 2 younger and 1 half-sister older.
Cool. I'm a middle child too, and middle childs are rare where I live. So whenever I meet someone who's a middle child, I'm like, I don't know what that was.
I get some ENFJ love here, so that's cool. But all right, back to Olivia. Since
Yeah, actually, about being a pushover, I find that I'm not really a pushover when it comes to things that I'm really involved in. And if I'm sure that I want to do something or I don't want to do something, then I'm sure about that. But what tends to happen is in social situations, I just kind of go too far sometimes, and because I find it kind of hard sometimes to fit in social situations. So I just go with the flow, but almost too much, so I end up losing myself a bit. Like when I was in high school and beginning of university, I would just drink too much, for example, and stuff like that. So I can easily lose myself when I'm in social situations, but when it comes to things that are important, I don't think I'm a pushover.
Mm-hmm.
That makes sense.
What about how does any play a role in your life? Extroverted intuition.
Well, for me, I just think like my attention is always being distracted by something. Like that's how I seem to experience it. And I start lots of things and never finish them. And I really love analyzing people, but I never get to conclusions about anything. Not even just with people, but just anything. I never really get to conclusions because I'm just so busy seeing new things all the time. So that can be a bit confusing sometimes.
So, okay. And Caitlin, welcome back. Glad to see you back. I probably had a connection disruption there, but we're good. We're happy to see you here. So, Caitlin, we were just asking Olivia kind of how extroverted intuition played a role in her life. Could you share your side of that? How's extroverted intuition played a role in your life? Maribel, that's awesome.
Well,
It's just that when I slurp this, it's really loud, so I'm afraid that you guys are going to hear this really loud.
My straw was making noise too, so I took off the lid, and I'm just drinking the slush like this.
You can do
Well,
it.
this is a drink from T4, so I can't, like, rip off the lid.
Oh.
Yeah, but you can do what Daniel does and mute your microphone while you're not talking. So you can
That's a
always.
good idea.
Yeah. So that being said, Caitlin, please, how has extroverted intuition played a role in your life? Can you?
would that be like, well, it helps me to be able to know who I can trust and who I can't. Like, normally I trust, depending on how the conversation goes at first, I'm very uneasy about, see, it's kind of weird because I also have, like, I have PTSD, so in a sense I don't trust, but in another sense I do. And for the most part, I'm able to, it seems like, connect the people.
Did we lose her again?
Affirmative.
Yeah, I think we lost her. Well, she was making a point, but we can always get back to her. So, Trey, do you have any questions for Olivia while we're waiting for Caitlin to come back?
Have you ever met an ENTJ? Personally?
Yeah, I'm dating an ENTJ.
Okay, so I'm kind of curious. I've always kind of been curious and never asked anybody. Because like I know exactly what it's like being an ENTJ talking to an INFP, but have you ever like maybe with the ENTJ you're specifically talking about, or just with any other? Have you ever like seen like any kind of because like INFPs kind of explore someone's FI in a sense. Like they might just kind of like look around and kind of get to know things and how it all works. But like what I've seen for ENTJs is what they kind of do is they kind of laser beam, and they just kind of like try to get through everything else and just eliminate everything else and get straight to the point. And I know that INFPs will usually take a more like approach of like just kind of letting the person talk and maybe asking questions here and there, but just kind of like absorbing when they can. And I was just kind of curious if like what it's like hearing an ENTJ, if you've ever had this experience, just kind of like laser beam in on your F5. Does it like excite you, or is it kind of nerve-wracking, or what is it?
I think I get what you mean. Like, I feel like he's very intently listening all the time. I don't know if he doesn't like ask me a lot of questions and laser beam in that way, but as I've gotten to know him better, I've realized that he listens to everything and remembers everything I say. I don't know, because I guess he's invested in me because we're in a relationship. But so in that sense, there's a lot of intensity there, because I know that whatever I say, he's going to be remembering it and thinking about it, and I see that and I work it. But generally, he just lets me kind of speak, and he doesn't. I wasn't ever like. I didn't get ever the feeling of like that laser beam intensity. But now that I know him better, I do. Because I've realized how he works.
Yeah.
His FI, like, I see it as very vulnerable, and I love like exploring that.
That's interesting.
Okay, so Daniel, you're recently exploring the dating world of INFPs. Would you share your perspective thus far? And I think you took Trey's advice, so we would love to hear your perspective on that, and then let's see if Olivia or Caitlin both agree with your perspective.
Don't get me wrong, INFPs are very great MBTI types. They're great people, great friends.
Okay, Donald Trump.
Great friends, guys. Great friends. INFPs are great people. Listen, INFPs are great people. They're my people. I just got off the phone.
Did you just get off the phone call with one of them?
I just got off the phone with a great friend. He's an INFP.
Okay. All right, we got that.
Always with his feelings. Always with his feelings. INFPs, listen, I've been dating INFPs since I've been 18, and nothing much has changed except my respect for introverted feeling. You know, I do really like and appreciate the presence that INFPs have, like their way of conversing and being very attentive to listening to others, being very emotionally present, and looking for really that authentic and genuine connection with somebody. You know, whoever they're talking to. I really think that's it's a very nurturing personality type. They're really great people. And, vote Trump 2016, 17.
We just lost a viewer.
All right, so
Sorry, Donald Trump can't count. So,
Caitlin or Olivia, would you agree that that assessment is fair? And also on following that, if you do agree or don't agree, why not? And on top of that, I'd like to know, since you guys introvert feeling, it's common to think that INFPs are very emotional and they display their emotions. But in my experience, I've seen something totally contrary to that. I've seen that INFPs tend to hold back their emotions toward other people and not let other people into their inner world. So can you elaborate on that as well? So first off, do you agree with Daniel? And then second, how do you display emotions? Do you display them actively, or is it more like you internalize them? Please share with us.
Yeah, I do agree with Daniel. I think I really enjoy listening to people and making them feel validated. That's really important. But I do feel my listening style, like going back to talking about my boyfriend, it's very different. Like I'm listening in the moment, but I don't necessarily put puzzle pieces together about people. I just want to listen to them and be present with them. Whereas I think maybe because of his NI, like he kind of builds images of people in his mind and listens to them like that. Whereas for me, it's just more in the moment. But yeah, I really enjoy that. I love validating people, and I love when people open up to me, and I want to get them to open up to me. But having said that, yeah, it makes it difficult sometimes because you're right, I'm closed sometimes, and I don't easily show people my emotions at all. And I think a lot of people think that I'm cold before they know me. So that can be difficult sometimes because I am a people person, but I don't show it very easily. So yeah.
well, we just started this interview, so trust me, we'll be getting into a lot of the conflicts INFPs will have in life with people and the struggles. We'll get into all the nitty-gritty, iceberg kind of qualities that you guys have. So
INFPs are the ENFJ mirror, so this is going to be really, really interesting when they start communicating. So, yeah, because it's like an INTP and an ENTJ. I mean, their functions are in the same order, but they're on the opposite polarity, or rather the opposite attitude. So it's interesting to see the contrast between the ENFJ and the INFP. But that being said, I do want to see if Mirabelle has something to ask the INFPs before we move on to a different perspective. So go ahead, Mirabelle.
I actually prepared a question that anyone can answer before I joined this, and that is, what is the difference between, I think it is, dominant, tertiary, auxiliary, and inferior? Because I'm still, don't know the difference
I want to
between...
answer.
Okay.
So, do you know, the difference, which ones are judging and which ones are perceiving functions?
So, I am an ENFJ, so I'm a judging type.
Yes, your first function, your dominant function, is the first one, the one that you use the most, and that would be a judging function, being extroverted feeling. All the thinking and feeling functions are decision-making functions, and so they make decisions, and the intuition and sensing, both orientations. So all the intuition and sensing functions are all perceiving functions. That's the way you see the world, and so it's just different modes of perception and decision making. So your dominant function is the one you use the most, and your inferior is the one you use the least. And they're going to be the same. They're going to be judging functions. So if this is your feeling function, this one down here is going to be your thinking. And then for perception, it's in the middle two. And it can flip. For an ENFP, their first function is a perceiving function. Same for INTJs. But then the middle and the middle two functions are going to both either be perceiving or judging, and the top and bottom one are going to be opposite of whatever the middle one was. But basically, the tertiary is the third one, auxiliary is the second one, dominant is the first one, inferior is the last one.
Muchas gracias.
You're welcome.
Okay, so we got a few comments I want to address. Some people were commenting on the channel. One particular viewer said, "It is a luxury to hear other personality types talk about the impressions of my own type, INFP." So this person, I guess, would like to hear the other perspectives. Ethan asked, for the INFPs, what kind of books do you like to read? So Caitlin or Olivia, would you mind sharing the books that you prefer to read?
Yeah.
Caitlin, you want to go?
I I particularly just like psychology books. It's not I like I for some reason I can't focus on one book for a long time unless I read it all in one night. And so I like a lot of like Nicholas Sparks books and kind of like the generic love stories almost. And then but what I really like and I really enjoy is like learning about almost like mental disorders for some reason. For some reason, I like really diving into different articles and stuff like that on different ways that people think and the way their brains work. Because I know that I know it's like I kind of want to just understand, and so I dive into things that I don't understand, so that way I can help other people. If I ever come to the point where I need to help somebody, I know exactly what to say, how to say it, and how to go about it where it's not going to make things awkward for them or make them feel like they're alone in what they're feeling.
Olivia, would you like to share? Would you agree with that? Is that what you do, or is yours different?
Actually, I just wanted to say so many of the things I resonated with, like not being able to finish a book very easily. Like I leave a lot of books half read or like 3/4 read,
Yeah.
and then I get distracted. And also, I'm really interested in mental disorders as well. Like I can go on long journeys down the internet, like reading about that. I don't really know exactly why, though. Maybe it's for the same. I never really thought about why I do that, but I'm just fascinated by that.
It's also, to interject, it's also because a lot of times, if you read actually The Neuroscience of Personality by Dario Nardi, he talks about that a little bit. You know, why they choose to go in the field of psychiatry or psychology. And INFPs that's one of their chosen career paths. Like one of the things they'll be happiest is psychology or psychiatry. More so psychology because you speak more and you work with somebody and you get in this intent listening mode. The Neuroscience of Personality specifically talks about how ISFPs and INFPs use their FI differently. And so Daniel has a lot of information on that as well. I'll have him elaborate with that in just a second. So, but yeah, a few more comments here. Let's see, just make sure we're good. And somebody also said there's a world turning inside of us, but no one else would ever know. Does that ring true with both of you and INFPs?
You say it again?
There was a world inside of us turning, and no one would ever know.
That resonates very much, yes.
I actually was wondering because Caitlin had actually mentioned how like she wanted to know what to say and what not to say so that people can feel like they are understood. And when she said that, like, it made me think, you know, if she was researching this and wanting to know that someone could relate, I think is the word she said, someone could relate, she doesn't actually have the mental disorder. So that's why, like, I question, like, did you, like, try to imagine a world where you had the mental disorder so that you could try to relate to somebody?
Yeah, honestly, I could see that. It's almost like you don't want, because I know that if I was in their shoes, I would want somebody to want to understand me as well. Because I feel like a lot of people don't understand me, like they don't take the time to listen, and when they do, it's almost like their perception of me isn't as much as they think. Like I give out a lot more than what they think that I've given, almost in a sense, because it's almost like I can tell my whole life story to someone and they'll say that I don't talk very much, and that's not me at all. And I want to be able to connect with them on that certain level to where they don't feel like they're any less than a normal person. Like, yes, you can have something diagnosed with you, but it doesn't make you any different or any less than a normal human being. You can have like a sickness or something like that, and it doesn't make you any less of a person rather than anybody else.
I think that deserves a round of applause. I just want to commend Caitlin and Olivia both because I've struggled with depression multiple times in my life, and as of right now, the depression I'm going through, it's the longest I've ever had. It's been, over 2 years, and I usually have it for less than a year. But for the first time in my life, I recently got a therapist, and I remember one time my father and I were talking to my therapist because I personally think that mental illness is something that should be talked about a lot more often, whereas my father thinks, well, it's taboo, keep it hush hush. And I told him, well, if more people were to talk about mental illness, including people who don't have any mental illnesses, then those who do have mental illnesses would know what to do, because a lot of people with mental illnesses struggle with suicidal thoughts and self-harm. But if mental illness was talked about more often, people would know about healthier alternatives. And I told my father, I wish the people around me talked about mental illnesses more often when I was younger, so I could have gotten a therapist at a much earlier state in my life.
I think it's really important as well. I really don't like the way it's treated generally, like antidepressants. I don't really think that's a good way to deal with things. And I see one of my friends has depression, like really bad depression, and she went on antidepressants, and I feel like it just kind of makes someone very neutral. They don't really feel anything, rather than, so I guess it cures their depression in a way, but I feel there's better ways to deal with it, and that involves talking about things and learning about yourself, like through MBTI. Like, I went through a period of depression, and learning about Jung and MBTI helped me so much. Like, just, I can't even express how much it helped me. And yeah, that's something I think is really important. Like, I just feel people need to learn to talk more about how they're feeling. And
Yeah, I think it's interesting too, because it's like a lot of times you don't know what's going on with someone, and they could make a little comment, and that little comment can come from a really dark place, and nobody knows where it came from. Only they know as a person, because they're the ones dealing with it. Like something, like if they were to say, oh, I could go kill myself or something like that, you know, they don't, other people don't take that seriously, but in reality they could actually be contemplating doing something like that at home, and then saying it out in public is just like, it's almost like a sign that they need attention, but they don't know how to ask for it, and it, you know,
like a cry for help, kind of.
I'm a minority in many different intersections, so I completely understand what you're talking about. And on the subject of antidepressants, I've never taken them before, and actually, so antidepressants are like birth control pills. Each company does different things. How do I phrase this? So a company that makes an antidepressant, it can work really well with one person, but it might completely not work for another person. It's just every single person with depression, if they take antidepressants, their body will respond best to a different brand, if that makes sense. So it's not like all antidepressants have the same effects on depressed people. I'm sorry if that didn't make any sense.
That makes a lot of sense. Especially, like, I mean, I don't really know what makes type. Like, it seems like, you know, it's biological, and it's like a biological preference. But like, what actually makes it, I'm not really sure. But like, it would make sense that if someone, you know, had a certain like chemical balance in their brain that differed from another person that caused their type, then maybe one type would benefit from a certain antidepressant, but another wouldn't, and it would like hurt them. So, just a thought. What?
It's like more about childhood, I think, rather than brain. I don't think it's something you're born with. I think it's really based on your childhood.
Are you talking about depression?
No, sorry, I meant type, like MBTI type.
Oh.
I think that's what you meant when you said about brain.
It's not nurture. Sorry, it's not. Yeah, it's not nurture. It's not something that like, you know, you can be put in an environment where you're kind of forced to act out of your own preference, and you may look like a certain type because of that behavior. But you know, your type is it's not like changeable because of your environment. What you preference will not change.
Yeah. So some other things that I'd like to share here is we have a comment from Simsim Gaida, and it's, what about medical fields for INFPs? Is it successful for them to move with their intuitive side other than thinking rationally? INFPs do think rationally. So I'm not sure what that question was about, because it's saying that basically INFPs don't think rationally, and that's not true. INFPs use FI as their decision-making process, and introverted feeling is a rational function as branded by Carl Jung. Okay, so it is a rational function. And if you look at ethics at the core, ethics is a very rational and reasonable way to come to a decision based on, you know, looking at reason. Ethics is usually rooted in reason. It's not like you're being unreasonable if you're using ethics as your framework or model. So I'm not sure about that question. Let's see, there's a couple other questions I want to look at, and just a second. So,
I'm looking at it too.
right. So
Elise says, "Give me a shout out." Shout out to Elise.
Well, we're not going to worry about Elise right now. No offense, Elise, but we got to make sure that we answer questions from our viewers.
I already shouted out to her, but
yeah.
Oh.
Daniel makes sure everybody's taken care of, and when I offend him, he fixes it. That's what he does best. Yeah. So.
TGID. Thank God
Except
for
when no
giving
one's around, then he just acts like us.
Yeah, exactly. Well, Daniel and Trey and I had a nice conversation last night, and it was very nice in the ENTJ realm. Daniel had to get really out of preference to keep up.
But it was working. It was working.
Yeah, he was doing really well. He was hanging.
And then I self-destructed, and then that was it.
Yeah, that negative reinforcement really works. All right, so back to the point. Olivia, you said obviously you're dating an ENTJ, and what has your experience been like with other types, and how is it like with ENTJs now, considering the fact that you're with one? Don't be basically, I'm asking for a non-biased opinion. What difficulties do you have with an ENTJ that you're with? Not necessarily who he is as a person or his personality, but just the cognition. Obviously, inferior FI, he may not see it on the same page as you, but he is an intuitive preference. So how does your intuition work with his, and how does your FI, so dominant and prevailing, and his FI in the inferior slot, very underutilized for most ENTJs? How does that work with you? Are you able to successfully withdraw it, and if you do, what does it look like? And how do you do it?
Well, on the intuition thing, like that's really a good connection for us, even though they're on different, like one's introverted, one's extroverted. That's a really strong connection. That's where we connect the most. I think we just can have conversations about anything, and I don't know, it just works really well. And on the FI, like I do bring out his FI very much, but I don't really do. I just feel like by being myself, I bring it out. And like by starting conversations on the things that I want to talk about, and by talking about my own feelings and stuff, then I just naturally bring it out in him. And it's kind of like I see how difficult it is for him as a process. But I think he really appreciates me just always listening to him. I think that's actually what it is. I just listen to him, and I ask him a lot of questions, and I just kind of slowly bring it out of him, like by asking questions and just really listening.
Is it your objective to get it out? Like, do you really like set your mind to, I'm going to get to this emotional core and I'm going to figure this guy out? Is that what it was at first, or did that take a lot longer? How was that process? Trey was smiling.
Yeah, when I first started seeing him, I didn't really see him as a very deep, like, emotional person or anything. I just thought he was very funny, and like that's why I was attracted to him, really, I think. But it was never like a thing that I tried to do. I guess we just got to know each other better. Like, we just realized we had a lot of things in common, and we just ended up having those kind of deep conversations, and it just ended up coming out. I don't know. I don't really know how it works. Like, we just, yeah. I think just by being myself with my FI, like, I just bring it out of him. It just comes out.
Is it like magic?
Yeah.
Okay, just wanted to be clear. That's what Trey says too. So, just seeing if Trey's right. Okay, so Caitlin, have you ever seen or met an ENTJ? There's two of them in here, obviously. So, but what's your experience like as an INFP working with, say, anybody who leads with thinking or prefers thinking? So, any T type.
Any what?
Any T preference, any person that has T in their character code. Have you seen any STJs or NTJs or NTPs or STPs?
Yeah, my brother, he's an ISTJ. Or ISTP. He's right here.
We might have lost her. She always has she's like right in the middle of her point, and then we lose her. It's just really unfortunate because we want to hear her perspective too. So she'll be back. All right, so in general, so Olivia, you talked about the, your relationship and kind of how it was more magical. Have you ever, been around another TJ type, and what difficulties had you had there as an INFP? Have you clashed with any T type, STP, NTP, and kind of explain how that was?
Yeah, actually, before I dated an
right now.
INTJ.
Sorry.
Oh, Caitlin's back.
I'm sorry. Yeah, my brother, he's an ISTJ or ISTP, and there's a lot of things that has gotten better through the years, I think. Before we were really like reserved from each other, and then now it kind of feels like it's so weird because he's right here. He we've just recently been able to kind of connect as almost adults in an adult way instead of a kid way, and he tells me things that are really practical, and it doesn't hurt my feelings as much. Since my mom's an INTJ, and when it comes to like feelings about about criticism and stuff like that, I kind of just take it and I'll just say something dumb about it to kind of throw it off, and then I'll take it into consideration, because like she'll say stupid stuff like I'll be on my phone too much, and then I'll just be like, well, there's nothing else to do, or I'll say something stupid and then I'll think about it later, but I won't like get butthurt over it. I try not to get butthurt. And the same thing with the stuff that my brother says. I try not to take any of it too seriously. And the same stuff with Trey. Trey, when he's helped me with a lot of things too, and it's like when he tells me things that are like straight up, it blows my mind because it's so simple. It's so simple if you take your feelings out of it, and I really enjoy those types of personalities, because they really do help me in the long run, because it's more of you're thinking more practical maybe, and I like working on that because I know that I do have a lot of feelings when it comes to certain things, and it depends.
All right, so we lost her right in the middle of a point, which is common for Caitlin. I don't know why Google Hangouts does not like Caitlin. All right, so actually I'm gonna hand the floor over to Daniel real quick, because I want him to really kind of capture the difference in between ISFP and INFP. He's recently read The Neuroscience of Personality. I love that. You guys have heard my video and my orientation, my attitude toward that. And so I'd like to hear Daniel's perspective. How do these two types use FI differently? Daniel, would you please take the floor?
Thank you for having me back in this beautiful place. I really appreciate it.
Did you just get off the phone with another INFP?
No, I'm just Donald Trump, right? Just
okay.
Yeah. No, so the book that Chad's referencing to, the Dario Nardi book, it's a really fascinating book to me, because for somebody who really appreciates observing human behavior, it's a gold mine, really, and especially when I read on ISFPs and INFPs, very interesting to see the little differences, I guess. Still kind of like downloading the two types and how they differentiate, but from what I can tell or tell the audience and you guys from experience, INFPs and ISFPs just have like they have a different focus as far as when they're using their introverted feeling, because they have different functions. ISFPs have NI and SE, and INFPs have NE and SI. So it's very interesting to see how INFPs are more kind of traditional in like their belief systems, and ISFPs are more, their approach is different to their own belief systems. It goes to say that neither is preference to be a certain way, but both utilize their introverted feeling in different ways. And I like seeing that play out. INFPs focus on a certain kind of conversation, very into talking about ideas, different in-depth, philosophies, just a lot of different things, getting to really know people. INFPs have a really great sense of being present in conversations, whereas ISFPs are very present with the actual physicalities of conversation, where they're really great at body recognition and understanding when somebody is very uncomfortable, very emotional, very appearance-driven. So ISFPs and INFPs focus differently on different situations within conversations. INFPs are very focused on what's being said, and ISFPs pay really close attention to what they're seeing, what they're hearing, like the sound of the voice being used. very sensitive to that. INFPs just as well, but the process is a little bit different, and its focus is different. And that goes without saying. They both share, I believe they both share TE, right, Chad?
Yeah, ISFP and INFP are both TE inferior.
So that's actually really interesting to me, because at the end of the day, ISFPs share way more functionality because they have NI and SE with me, but at the end of the day, their logic and TE is different. Whereas INFP, just, everything is just preferenced the same way, but just in introverted and extroverted polarities opposite. And I always get along with INFPs more so because of that preference. ISFPs, there is a struggle to maintain that integrity between conversation, and I feel like this is in part due to their SE, but that's maybe a conversation for another day when our focus is INFPs.
ISFPs?
INFPs. Our focus is INFPs today.
Okay, so you want to talk about ISFPs though, right?
No, I don't. I don't.
Okay, just making sure, because
I'm making sure. I'm making sure. What emails? What emails are you talking about?
Okay. All right. Mirabelle, do you have any questions for Olivia or Caitlin while Caitlin's here and present? She's going to disconnect probably in a second, but she's been having some trouble. So Mirabelle, please go ahead and take the floor for a bit and see if you have any questions for our INFP guests.
Should I feel guilty because I don't have any questions
No.
for the lovely INFPs, but I actually have a question for Daniel, because when he was talking, and he articulates beautifully. I wish I could articulate as beautifully as him, but
hey,
I
word
think
diction for the word. Word diction for the win.
Okay. So at one point, I think you said INFPs are very, how do I put it, sensitive, empathetic to other people's emotions. Like they can really, sense what another person is feeling. Is that what you said?
Both types do that. ISFPs will be more in the environment with that. So ISFPs will be more reactionary to people's demeanor, their emotions, their empathy. I feel like INFPs are more inclined to want to understand that inclination that they have, whereas ISFPs just assume the inclination. If that makes sense. So a good example is INFPs would want to understand where somebody's coming from, whereas if you're being in distress and you're in the presence of an ISFP, they will just pretty much assume, for the most part. They will inquire, but it's after the fact from already feeling it themselves, if that makes sense.
That does make sense. So do you think an INFP, when they're trying to distinguish what another person is feeling, do you think they find certain types easier to identify their emotions than others, or would you say all MBTI types it's easy for them to decipher?
That's a good question for the INFPs, actually.
Yeah, that's a better question for them. I could answer it in my own way, but I am not an INFP.
So let's let Olivia answer that.
So was the question is it easier for me to read different MBTI types?
Yeah, when it comes to say pick up on emotions from other people, really get into their emotional atmosphere, is it harder for certain types for you? Like say, maybe you have an INTJ in front of you. Is it harder for you to get to their emotions than it is for an ESFP?
Yeah. I think people who share FI, I find it easier to have that with them. Actually, saying the ESFP example, I have a really good friend who's an ESFP, and I've always been able to really read her quite well and understand her, and the way we express ourselves emotionally is quite similar. And I don't know, that's actually a good question. I have to think about it.
All right, Caitlin, do you have an answer or response to that question, or did you disconnect? I think she froze. Yeah, she's gone. Okay, so I'm going to actually really distinguish this for a second.
Sorry.
Okay. So your audio is cutting out, Olivia, so just, I don't know if it's, I'm getting little bits and pieces. I don't know if it's me or if it's everybody else, but your audio is kind of...
No, it's over here too.
Okay, so...
Over here too.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to jump in real quick and say that, you know, the key thing to realize and the key thing to distinguish an ISFP versus an INFP is their focus of attention in the extroverted world. Where's their focus of attention? Because their focus of attention is both on FI. Okay, remember that the external world is a way for them to further explore their insights. The dominant function is the seat of the ego. It's essentially what they identify with. This is where they get energy. This is where they get energy, because the further you remove away from what you are, your identity, the more energy you're going to lose. Okay, so when you go into extroverted intuition, you're actually losing energy as an INFP, typically. Okay, but that's what you prefer over SI. That's what you prefer over SE because you're an INFP. So that being said, their interaction with the outer world is to primarily build their value framework. Now, so when you look at an ISFP and you look at an INFP, their approach to the outer world is quite different. An ISFP is using realistic, practical realities to further explore their value frameworks. Okay, so they'll look at a situation and go, here's this fact, and here's this fact, and here's this fact. Now I'm going to break these facts apart and then continue to build this value framework. Whereas INFPs tend to be seen more as idealists because they take abstractions from reality, the pursuit of possibilities, and they use that to explore their frameworks. So you'll see this idealism. This is what this reality could be. And that's how it should be, based on the SI component, should. This is what it should become. NE has this possibility. And then they build their value framework with it. So a lot of times you're going to see ISFPs more concerned with expressing themselves in the real world, where INFPs are actually concerned about, say, moving an agenda forward in the sense of their value frameworks because it's not existing right now. So an ISFP is more interested in extroverting, say, their inner world to the outer world, and an INFP is interested in pursuing something that is more ideal, the pursuit of ideal. So you're going to see quite a type difference in between the ISFP and the INFP. That being said, when you look at FI, the INFP is focused on this long, constant listening mode. They're actually the type that's seen, according to Dario Nardi, they're the type that actually can listen the longest and the most sustained. Okay, so it's more of an intense listening. And that's probably because they're looking between every word with extroverted intuition, and they're able to draw connections. So their focus is pretty sustained. They achieve a Zen-like or blue state when they're actually listening to other people. Now, when you look at the ISFP, they still use FI, so they achieve a blue state too, but the method in which they do it is different. The gaps aren't filled with meaning or possibilities necessarily. What's actually happening is I'm paying attention to realities. Okay, so there could be a lot less intent when they're listening. So their listening mode is different. The ISFP, when we talk about that, we're going to talk about how they listen to people differently than the INFP. Not that one's better or worse, because they both have their advantages and disadvantages. And so when we get into ISFP, it's going to be quite different. So that being said, Olivia, do you have anything to add to that perspective?
Yeah, I mean, actually, one of my very good friends is an ISFP, and pretty much everything you've all said is really true. And I feel like she comes to judgments more easily than I do. She comes to like solid conclusions more easily, especially when it comes to people. Mm-hmm. Whereas I'm always changing my mind and always on a new thing. And the thing about idealism is really true as well. Like, I'm so idealistic about the way I think things should be and about what I want from my life. And whereas the ISFP, my friend, she just seems to go through life quite easily. She has her values, yeah, and she just acts on them. Whereas I'm always thinking, I'm not acting. And for the listening thing, yeah, it all made sense about the different ways in which we listen. I feel like I'm always trying to connect dots, whereas ISFPs and ESFPs as well, they just kind of, they're present in.
Okay. So if everybody got that, because we're still getting some disconnect with your audio. And so I'm getting little bits and pieces of that. I don't know if the other people were able to hear. If anybody heard better than me, could you elaborate what she just said? Daniel, did you hear anything?
Yeah, she pretty much agreed with everything that we said.
Okay. I don't know if Caitlin's here. I'm going to wait till her connection clears up. Trey, you haven't said anything in a while, so I want to hear what your experience has been with the INFPs that you experienced with, and let's let Olivia listen in on this and see if this is true, rings true with her ENTJ situation.
Wow. Okay. So, for me, INFPs, like, generally have always kind of opened new perspectives to me in a sense of, like, how good people can be. And I think it's just because of that focus on what it is they truly care about, and probably the listening part is that they understand that if they listen longer and they understand the person with, are listening more, and because they're probably the best type at it is probably why, but because they take in more information listening to someone instead of making their own judgments on a person, I think that they end up getting a better picture of the person overall. And I think that that's been a big struggle with me personally. And so, with all INFPs I've ever met, we'll reach this point where it's kind of like, it's almost like I've just met better and better ones as we go forward, because the first one, wasn't so good at it, wasn't so focused on it, was still trying to put everything together in her life. And so, she wasn't the best developed INFP, I guess, and I really liked her because she was like, super, she understood me, and I could joke around, I could be myself, I could kind of flex my SE and just do whatever, just kind of be a freaking idiot, and like we could both enjoy it, and it was like really fun. I mean, if you just watch this, you'd be like, what on earth are they doing? But like we were having fun, and that was something that I hadn't really ever gotten to do, because people would normally look at that and be like, yeah, this kid's got problems, like this kid's weird. And I always knew that if I ever felt that I needed to explain myself to her, she would understand, and so I wouldn't have to worry about what was going to happen next. And that was my NI kind of not having to worry or not having to work that hard. But then later on, I had met INFPs that, really understood me, and that was something I hadn't really ever gotten before, and it was almost like where we can have conversations without actually saying words, and we can just like look at each other and be like, and just kind of make a face or something, and like we know like what it is. Like I can, like normally with people, if I think they're thinking something, I can voice it, and they'll be like, and I can just give enough so that they'll know that I'm talking about their thoughts, but they can also like but normally they freak out. Like normally if I talk to somebody and I think I know what they're thinking, and I want to share it with them, or I want to comment on something they were thinking, then I'll do that. But then they'll get kind of freaked out. When this has happened with INFPs, they don't freak out. I think it's like they're like, he actually understands me enough to actually know what I'm thinking, and they're like, what? And then they kind of engage in this like communication that's not even like actually talking, and it's really cool. Because you can't do that with other people, because they just get freaked out, or they hate it, or they don't like the fact that you're getting all too engaged and stuff. And so it's really crazy, because it's almost like we can understand each other on a level where communication is even required almost. And it's been really interesting. Just like there were parts of me that like, I would have a plan or goal in my head, and it was almost like they could see me revert from being like a genuine real person to like fulfilling a goal. And then when they saw that goal, it was almost like they pointed out. And externally, I didn't think anything changed. Like maybe it was my eyes or something, but like I didn't think anything about what I was doing externally had changed. And so there was nothing, I thought, to be able to tell someone else that my mindset had changed as well. But I had seen with a specific INFP, just kind of like realizing, no, this is what you're thinking, like this is what you're doing, and then pointing it out, because they wanted me to be real. And I think that they know they can be direct with me in that sense, and I won't get upset. And because they know that, they'll share it with me and say, I know what you were doing right here, and I know why you're doing it, like it makes sense, and they kind of validate it, and they tell you, like, I understand why, like I understand your intentions and motivations, but like I still know, and I want you to know that I know. And it kind of leads me to think like, oh wow, like, I didn't have to do that, because they know, I don't know, it's weird, because they kind of understand what I really want and what I'm truly looking for, and so I don't have to make a plan, you know what I mean, to like get that, because they'll know that I'm making a plan, and they'll know what it is that drives me to do that. And so they can just kind of look at it and be like, no, I understand. And so for me, most of the time with INFPs, I know beforehand that I can just pretty much tell them anything. So that's what I normally do. And it allows for this really awesome like progress in the relationship. That's my personal experience.
Okay, so we got a lot of questions I gotta get to on these on the YouTube channel. So the first question is, I don't know which one I want to go with first. So right here, have you ever experienced a life event or circumstance that caused you to rethink one or more of your values? If so, what happened? So since you guys have such a sophisticated value framework, and I say that with all seriousness and compliments because it is sophisticated in the sense of FI. What causes you guys to question your value framework? How far does it have to go where you go, you know what, maybe I'm wrong value-wise. Maybe my ethics really are wrong. What does it take? If you haven't experienced it, then what do you think would make you question yourself? Caitlin or Olivia? Either one.
I know that I have a lot of values when it comes to maybe like domestic violence, because of growing up in it. It's almost like I don't like it when somebody talks to like their wife or their mate or something like that. I don't like it when they talk to them a certain way, and I can tell through like certain words that they'll use that I know is common from what I went through. And so with me, it's hard because it's like with my dad, it's like if it's anybody else, I will kind of like cut them off, or I'll try to help the person, like the victim that's involved. But but I don't want anything to do with the person that's doing it to them. But it's turning it around. Like I just recently got in contact with my dad like 3 days ago, and it's almost like the complete opposite. It's like I really want to understand why he did that in the first place, but I don't care about anybody else. It's just the way I saw it and the way it happened with my dad. Because it's weird because we can talk and we can talk for hours and hours and hours about things that the fun days, the lake days we called it, and it's like the days where you just think your childhood is just the best, better than anybody else's. And we'll talk about the memories, and he'll remember a lot of them, and we'll just laugh. And it's like I haven't talked to him in like 7 years, and it was like we never left. Like we had that type of, I don't know, communication-wise, and I don't know. It's just that type of value when it comes to violence on that side.
We're losing Caitlin, but she's back.
Does it keep cutting out?
Yeah, just a little bit on that tail end. If you'll rehash just that last bit.
I was saying that it's different when it's somebody else, when it's like where it came from, where the origination of where that development of the value came from, that's where it can change. So it has to be like the main core point of where it happened at. So the exact reason why I don't approve of it is exactly where I have to go to in order to change my thoughts to understand why stuff like that happened.
Okay. A question for Olivia that I have is, you INFPs in general deal with, they're always, I would say almost always, completely misunderstood by the bulk of society. You're going to find that one or two people understand you guys, but ultimately most people don't have that understanding of you. How do you cope with knowing that anybody you meet just doesn't know you? Anybody, and it takes such a long time, and they're not willing to say invest that time. How do you guys cope with that?
Who are you asking?
Olivia.
Sorry.
It's sometimes. I mean, I don't really know. I try and work on just expressing myself as much as possible, and then hoping to find people who will understand, and hoping to find those connections. And that's something I'm really trying to work on, is expressing myself, because I feel like the more you do that, then the more you'll find people who will understand. But yeah, I think it's easy for INFPs to just become kind of bitter and like decide that they're not gonna try. Like my dad's an INFP as well, and I see that in him. Like I see a lot of like pain over the years of him just constantly being like misunderstood or not. Yeah, like people don't see his depth. So I think he's become quite like closed off from the world, and I want to try not to be like that, because it is quite. I think it is kind of an easy path to go down if you're constantly feeling like that. So I try and remember his like feelings about that, and I just try and work on meeting as many people as possible and expressing myself as much as possible, and hoping to find more connection, because I think that does work. I mean, it's easy to feel misunderstood, but there are actually so many people out there that will understand and will take the time to listen.
Do you think it's fair to say that INFPs are at some point in their life they're faced with a choice to either give in and go the path of just kind of avoiding everybody in general and sticking close, or they can kind of still continue to put themselves out there over and over and over again just to find those people? Do you think that's a common theme among INFPs to make that choice at some point in their life? And they can always reverse it, obviously, but it's common. So, Caitlin, what is your perspective on that? I don't know if she heard me. So, okay, Olivia, can you answer that question?
Yeah, I think there can be a definite point where you just give up, and it's very hard to get out of that because, well, for me, I feel like I have so many ideals and so many things that I want to do, like so many things that I want to do, but it's so hard for me to actually get to the place where I'm doing them and starting the journey on actually doing that, because that T is quite difficult. And it's so easy to just give up and like let go and just float through life, kind of not really doing the things that you feel like you really want to do and not connecting with others and making the effort. So, but I think, yeah, it really depends on the person as well. I mean, it depends on your whole situation. But with my dad, I do see that in him. I see that he kind of has very closed off from the world. He kind of hides away in books and music, and he once said to me, actually, like, I kind of lost hope in people. I just focus on culture. He said that to me, so yeah, I got the sense that he really has given up when it comes to that side of things. So I just think it's really important for INFPs to just go for things as much as possible to stop that from happening.
Caitlin, do you have anything to add to that, if you can hear me?
Yeah, when it comes to misunderstanding, like the world not understanding, is that what?
And would it be fair to say at the point of, say, at some point in your life to make a choice between kind of introverting and getting away and stop expressing yourself and just settling that most people are just not going to understand, or putting the point out there that you're going to continue to express yourself and hope that you're going to come across the people that do? Would you say that's like that's a crossroads you come at some point in the life of an INFP?
It depends on who it's with. Well,
I mean, in reference to you. Like, do you come to that point at any point?
Not by myself. Usually it'll be because of something that someone did. So if I was to open up to somebody and really like kind of give them my heart almost and explain to them why something happened or my feelings on something or a value on something, and be like completely, I don't know why, but censors this to me and it makes me so upset. They they'll laugh, and it's like, it makes me not want to say anything to anybody. It makes me not want to talk to them again. It makes me want to just keep it at a and by kind of a conversation, because it hurts. It honestly hurts. It's not, because you can sit there and you can take so much, and then once it hits that value of yours, and then it's like they disrespected that, it's almost, it gives you a whole new perspective of how they are. It just makes me feel so almost like a sick to my stomach. I would never want anybody to feel like that, like how they made me feel at that moment. I would never want them to feel that way. If they opened up their self to the point where they're like emotional, like they're crying, and they're sobbing, and it's never been like, they're not normally like that,
Okay, well, let me rephrase the question in a way. That was a good answer. I like what you were saying. But to rephrase the question, have you, your general approach to life, do you continue to express yourself, or have you learned to retreat and stop expressing yourself in hopes that somebody will try to get to know you without that expression?
I'll paint. Honestly, I'll do something that makes me feel like I can be understood by my hands. I'll paint something, or I'll buy something.
Wow. Okay, so That was a very splendid answer, actually. I like that answer. That was really expressive. That was a good answer. Trey,
What?
I know what you're thinking. So, all right, Olivia, I've got another question for you, and the question is, when you are attempting to get to the emotional state of, say, an ENTJ or whoever it may be at the time, the question I have is when you can't get to that emotional state and you're getting barriered out and people are not letting you in, is it problematic for you, or is it more of I understand why they're not letting me in, and I know what to do about it, and I'm not going to really fret about it? So what's the importance? What's your perspective on that?
Yeah, I'd say it's more of the latter. I'd say usually I understand if the person doesn't want to open up, and I don't try and force them. But sometimes I do think maybe I could try and be more like delving into them, because I feel sometimes I'm too passive and I don't ask them enough or draw it out of them enough. And I feel like, yeah, I could help them more if I did that. But generally I try and let people figure things out themselves, just because that's how I do things. Unless if they come to me, then I want to help them as much as possible. But if someone is not, for whatever reason, opening up, then I usually respect that. And I try and let them figure it out.
Okay.
But it depends on the person as well, the relationship.
All right. Of course. I was talking more in a general sense, but yeah, that makes sense. It obviously does depend on what your relationship with that person is. I mean, sometimes you know them enough to go, oh, that would be like, oh, this is what we need to do, or this is what we need to do. And with this person, you may go, I'm not going to do that because that's not that person's preference. Obviously, that's a big thing. I try to just blanket these statements to make them a little more general, but we can really get into specifics. I'm going to stop being the one to ask questions right now. I know Daniel wanted to actually elaborate kind of the makeup of an INFP. Daniel, do you still want to go down that road? Your microphone's muted. Okay.
Yeah, the makeup of an INFP?
Yeah, you wanted to talk about like the building blocks of an INFP and how they interact with the world. You said that we'll get to that earlier, and so we're running out of time. So I want to make sure we get to that now.
How they interact with the world. I would say it's the exact. I feel like in its preferences, right? It's the exact opposite of the ENFJ. They're both very authentic people, and they really want to focus on that authenticity with other people, but in different ways. And this manifests pretty much in every opposite down the ladder, right? When you look at FE and FI, FE is about being outgoing, right? And FI is expressing those feelings. FI is about being with those feelings and maybe being with those feelings with different people, and being in those feelings, understanding other people's feelings, and relating it all back to them to kind of bring into their reservoir of values and understanding the world, which ends up with them really creating like an experience with their NE, and really checking out all these patterns in conjunction with their values and the feelings that they have, and really getting down to what do these feelings really mean, and constantly understanding and regurgitating all these experiences. And then you have like SI, which really kind of creates that almost, it's not even rigid, but it kind of creates like a traditional sense with who they are and what all of those things mean to them, and then kind of like logically and rationally kind of doing all that stuff. So I mean, I don't know if that's totally accurate. That's pretty much what I've seen. All the INFPs that I know really kind of like, they also guide through life, but in a different way. It's not really about, they don't guide through life without struggles. I think that's an ISFP thing. They just don't worry. They're not big on worrying. But INFPs are very focused on being okay, and they do know they're very cognizant of the challenges that they face, and they're very open to talking about this with people, almost as much as ENFJs are with their challenges. But INFPs specifically, they really navigate the world and try to really discover their own genuine nature through challenges, and really kind of dive into what everything means to them in the moment. And they're very present-driven, kind of like STPs, but in like a very different and intuitive, genuine way, which is something that gives them a lot of credibility when it comes to interacting with them. You can always feel safe and secure and nurturing kind of who they are. Sorry, I'm like, my mind's going. There's so much to say about INFPs for just a short conversation, but if I like a specific place to focus on, I would be a better use. But
Yeah, a lot about the SI. Like, I think that gives us a very kind of grounded feel sometimes. Like we really feel
that's very true.
in a way. And trying to be grounded is very important for me anyway. I really try and be grounded, but then there's always so many new things happening.
Yeah, so like there's this like divide or like a divergence of like, my foundation is very open-minded, but then at the end of the day, I always end up clinging to something and like having that happen. So I get that. It's a struggle, but it's good because it's like a push and pull between being, being fixed, being static, and then being dynamic, being fixed and dynamic. And there's always that exploration that INFPs really like, because it's like kind of like a contradiction almost. Like SI really wants you to kind of like, be grounded in something. Like this is my whatever, but then you have NE and it creates all these different ideas, and then that's connected with really how you emotionally feel about those ideas. So then it's like, oh wait, new ways of creating a new foundation for myself. So INFPs are always evolving too, and it's kind of cool.
I have some stuff to say because I was just thinking. You guys were talking about introverted sensing, and it made me think of INFPs. And remember how we talked earlier about like, kind of how Caitlin looks at mental disorders and kind of tries to put herself in that world. Something that I think that a lot of INFPs say, well, something that they're famous for, is that it seems as if they kind of envision their world like the way that the world should be in a way, just kind of like always in their head and like some other reality, and like trying to like kind of like seeing it all and like hoping and wishing that like our world was like that. And I think that that's interesting because with a lot of like SI users, like they may like, I don't know, they compare so many things to each other. Like they can eat one sandwich and then the next sandwich and be like, this next sandwich is not as good as the first one, and be like, I don't want to eat this, I want the last one. And so like it's just interesting because I can only imagine with INFPs thinking about one reality and then comparing it to the one that we have and going, oh wow, like if only like we had this. So it's almost like they have to put up with like the reality we're in. But I also think it's interesting because in exploring someone's own personal like wants and needs, you can kind of imagine a world where all their needs are fulfilled, and you can kind of see their own ideal world. Like I was just wondering if any of you INFPs have ever like done that, in the sense of like when talking to someone, finding out what it is they care about. Do you see a world like in your head where like this is how it's operated, like this is how it works, and the things that would make them happy in said world? And like, do you imagine that and kind of learn to appreciate their own world and whether or not you could fully function in it? And do you ever put yourself in that world as well and question whether or not you could appreciate it, or if it's more of like a I can see why they appreciate it? That's a lot.
No,
Go ahead.
I'm not sure if I understand your question completely, but I do tend to visualize a lot when I'm trying to understand people, for sure, and I do try and put myself in their shoes, and it's.
Oh.
I think we lost Olivia. Okay, so she was on a point, but I have a question for Caitlin while we have her here. What is the role that family values play into your frame of reference and your value framework?
I feel like everybody has their own way of how they're going to go about things, and so I want to give them space, but also I want to be in their lives at the same time. And being that I am older now, it's taken a lot for me to accept that I have to learn to let go, because eventually everybody will grow up, and mentally being able to prepare for that is difficult, but if I ponder on the thought long enough, I feel that I'm ready to do it. So, I don't know.
So, okay, so what? But I guess my question really is, where do family values play? What role do they play? So, how do you see the family?
Oh, my family?
Not your family per se, but families in general. Do you think families are necessary? Do you think they're important? Do you think being together in a family is important?
Yeah, I believe that being a family is important, but I believe that I believe that family needs their space to grow too,
Okay.
and be their own unique person.
Right. Okay. All right. So I'm going to turn the floor over to anybody who has questions. Please make your questions brief, and then I will close out. Okay. So anybody has questions? Mirabelle, Daniel, Trey, and if you do have questions, please make it brief.
Okay, I have one quick question.
Sure.
When do you think is the appropriate time to ask someone for their type? Because I always think, oh, it's too early, but then I end up never asking them.
For me, or is this question for me or the INFPs?
Oh, it's for everyone.
Okay, so you know, I don't really ask people their type. It doesn't really make a difference to me because when it comes to learning to interact with people, most people aren't going to know their type. So you've got to learn to recognize functions that are being extroverted at any given time. And you don't conclude an entire type. You just look at the function being extroverted, and you adapt to that function. Okay. So I don't really guess people's type. I mean, I do in my head, but I don't really ever care that much. I like to just play around with it, be like, oh, I wonder if this person's this way. And that's as far as it goes for me. I'm sure it's different for other people, but I've never been, being an MBTI practitioner, it's not canonical for me to, you know, just type people. I like to play the game, of course, and, you know, imagine what they are, but I am not one to conclude, oh, yeah, this person's an ISTP, or, oh, yeah, it's an ESTJ. And the more that I've learned about MBTI, the more that I doubt my ability to type someone on the surface. Okay, so, and, you know, that kind of, as I continue my education, and I'm almost done with my master practitioner license, I've identified that I am unable to type people just by looking at them. You know, and I like to guess, and sometimes I'm right, but a lot of times there's a lot more to a person than what you see. And I use the common classical example of this, which is if you watch me and you saw me every day, 1 hour a day, not even 1 hour a day. Let's say you saw me in passing and it was at lunch and I was eating Chinese food, right? Let's just say I was eating Chinese food, and then you're like, oh, he must really love Chinese food. That's his favorite food. I think that's a bit assumptive because I may be eating Mexican food at night, and I love Mexican food more than Chinese food, but you don't see that side of me. So therefore, you can conclude that my favorite food or my preference is Chinese food, but in reality, it's Mexican food. But you have no idea. Because at the time, I was eating that Chinese food. So you see what I mean? So you can't really tell by what you see. You can only tell by actually asking for someone's type. And to answer your question, I don't ever ask. I can't really answer that effectively. I don't think it's even important to ask. I think it's important to recognize what function is being extroverted, which is a course I teach, is to recognize functions being extroverted at any given time. You know, so...
Merci beaucoup.
I'm sorry?
Oh, I said thank you in French.
Oh, yeah. I just, you faded out. Okay,
I have a question.
Yes.
I have a question. So,
For who?
just like for the INFPs, do you guys think of your partner as like you kind of, when you're with them, you kind of don't really want to be with them, but when you go home, it's kind of like you think things over and over and over again to almost fit the way you wanted it to go? So the way that you wanted things to be, do you like, I don't know, kind of like idealize them to be a certain way and then
Attempt to rationalize it later?
yeah, like rationalize it later and try to accept it later, because that's
Yeah.
really hard.
I struggle firstly with idealizing people too much and then getting disappointed. But also, I overthink everything so much after an interaction, especially if it's an important one to me, like a really important relationship. I just go home and analyze it, and I don't ever get anywhere because I just overthink everything. But yeah, I tend to like look at conversations again and analyze them so much. But I find, like, if you're talking about partners, when I'm with them, I feel really happy and everything. But when I don't feel like I think about it too much. But then when I leave, I start thinking and thinking. And it never ends.
And this is
Yeah.
common for the use of SI in the INFP. Is this is the way it should be. You're creating an archetype of what the perfect person is, and then you're looking at angles of them. This person is doing this thing, right? And you're looking at those possibilities exploding from that. This person could be this way. So then you attempt to rationalize it with inferior TE. Okay? You're like, oh, well, he did this and he did this, so he really might actually be that way. I'm just not seeing it, and that's that inferior TE coming to play based on little bits of evidence that you're seeing and possibilities that are coming from NE. So it's very, very likely for an INFP to idealize, but when you're stuck into the position of it's almost like looping, where you're analyzing it over and over again, and you're also going, well, I'm not happy with this person, the first thing I say is, what are you doing with that person if you're not happy with them? You know, that's the first question I ask is if you're not happy while being with them, then you're probably not going to be happy with them. Don't make someone fit you because you're A, afraid of being alone, and B, you don't know what it's like to be without somebody. I'm not saying that's your circumstance. I'm saying that as a general statement. Don't feel like you have to be with somebody and that you're going to make it work. If you find yourself rationalizing why you're with somebody, you shouldn't be with them. You shouldn't have to rationalize. You know, so it should be an enjoyable experience for the most part. Yeah, you're going to have your conflicts, and you're going to have your situations, but ultimately you shouldn't be going, you know, like, well, he's kind of this way. I guess I like that. Well, I guess, and you're convincing yourself that you like somebody. You know, and that would be my recommendation if anybody's going through that at any given time. And if you find yourself in that loop where you're not happy with those particular circumstances, then it's something to analyze. And I think analyzing it afterward is important. You know, why am I doing this? What are my values? But again, you got to remember the INFP is very, very, very committed to people, and by nature. When they set a commitment, which is hard to get out of them, by the way, but when they set it, they're committed, and so they'll typically sacrifice a lot of the things they may normally do to maintain that commitment until they're crossed value-wise. And this is normal for INFPs. Once those values are crossed, then it's okay for them to justify saying leaving or abandoning a relationship. But until then, they will put up with quite a bit of crap unless it crosses those that value framework. So this is a challenge with a lot of INFPs because they do idealize people they're with in relationships typically. As they grow and they develop their other functions and tap into that inferior TE, they can often reason their way out of a bad situation.
I was gonna say that when you said that they could idealize people and they could kind of set like some kind of mental standard on it, but then kind of rationalize why they may not be, or they may be that way. They may be that way and I just don't see it or something like that. I think that kind of like I can just kind of see people in the comments like, oh yeah, I have an INFP girlfriend that set a standard on me that was too high and I didn't like it and blah blah blah. But like thing is, I can kind of see in that scenario though, and INFP going like, who knows, they might be like this and I just don't know about it. And then when they see that the person isn't that way, they start to find out why. And then they can kind of understand the person better because the person may not have like reached their standard, but like there's a reason why they didn't. And I think that it's probably common for them to find that.
All right, so the last thing I want to cover, then I'm going to ask Daniel if he has any questions. The last thing I'm going to cover to make sure our viewers get this portion too is how inferior TE plays a role in the INFP. So when you look at the INFP, you know that they value TE. TE is their anima or soul function, which is the bottom function of their conscious function stack. Essentially, you've got that's that fourth function. That fourth function, that TE, when it's essentially spazzing out or in the grip, you're going to see a side of the INFP that you normally don't see. This critical, cynical side or over judgmental side, and it can snap pretty quick. I often like to refer to it as a TE bomb, and they can get very, very logical very quickly. And you know, and that's that inferior, and they have an affinity for TE because it is that last function. It's like I have an appreciation for order because I'm in, you know, this person's an INFP, so they do appreciate order. So you'll find a lot of INFPs tend to be or look and appear organized, you know, and yet they find their mind maybe very chaotic. But yet they structure lists and they still have this affinity to make lists. They don't always do it, but when they do, they make it look beautiful. They usually have often beautiful handwriting, very things that are, you know, appealing because of that inferior TE structuring and ordering and making things look nice. And so it's appealing. And that's a lot of that appreciation for SI, too. SI is the appearance, but then you pull in that TE. How do I structure this? So you'll see INFPs often are confused with their INFP because they do utilize to-do list. And because that inferior function, that TE, is an affinity for them. Just like for an ENTJ, they have an affinity for FI. And so this is often the side they appreciate about ENTJs as well. And if you look at the INFP's inferior, a lot of times they have these beautiful dreams they've planned out. This is what I want to do, and they have a general idea of how they want to do it. Challenge arises in, how do I get there? How do I actually get this done? What are the step-by-step steps? And how do I learn this particular skill? How do I execute? And this is often times why they pair up with ESTJs or ENTJs, because they can drive forward those particular agendas, and they can mobilize the resources to make that happen, where an INFP may not know how to acquire those resources naturally. Now they get the skill as they develop TE. So it's important to recognize that TE function in the INFP functional stack is quite important for the development of an INFP and understanding their affinity and appreciation for it. Hence why you'll see a lot of ENTJ or ESTJ INFP combos. And same thing with ISFP, is they tend to appreciate that in the TJ, especially the ETJ personalities. So you'll see that quite a bit in the INFP personality. So Olivia or Caitlin, any comments on that? And then I'm going to ask Daniel to take over, or Mirabelle if they have any questions, and then we'll close this out.
Yeah, I definitely.
Olivia?
I feel like I need a T dominant around to help me. Like, I have so many things that I want to do and so many ideas that I want to like present to people, but I just need someone to help me. Like, that's how I feel, and I know that I could work on it myself, but yeah, I do feel like that's why I really like NTJ types especially. And when you said something about nice handwriting, like, and about ordering things, like, really, like, I have this notebook where I write down lyrics to songs that I like, and I write them down super structured, and I think about which verses are going to go where, and like make them all pretty and stuff. And that's like a really, I think that fits with the like, whole FITESI thing, like expressing myself and making it really ordered and stuff. So yeah.
And you'll see that TE kind of come up in those little small bits. Like, if you really look at it, like what importance is it to actually organize this little book? You know what I mean? But that TE comes out because you have an affinity for it. You know, and that's that inferior function playing a role, and you can always see it, and it's unconscious. It's not like you're like, I'm going to make a journal that is super organized. You're not thinking that. You just naturally do it. That's unconscious function use. And it kind of just comes out, and then you're like, why am I doing this? I don't understand. And that's what that inferior function. It's the same for us in FI as ENTJs. Caitlin, you have anything to add?
No, I completely 100% agree. It's like with the hand, I agree with everything. I can't even say it better than what you did.
All right, well, thank you for that. Daniel, you have any questions for the INFPs? Brief, fast, concise.
I guess. I mean, I don't have anything to just sum up, you know, because it could just get into a whole conversation. But I really like what you guys said about TE. That was really interesting because I've seen the best and worst of it, and there's just such a huge range when it comes to, you know, TE and like your TE explosions, and then totally, you know, it's almost like you're cracking down. Like I usually see, like in an INFP's extreme stressful situation, I see them as cracking down into like a house, like a SWAT team, and they're like, go in, and then just like they bash down the door and like they just conquer with TE, and it's like so like it's almost like it's scary because it's like you don't even know what it's gonna do. And that differs a lot from TI. From, you know, in my standpoint, my TI is more precise when it is, you know, when I'm in a stressful environment. With INFPs, TE just goes all over the place, and it's very interesting to watch. But besides that, I agree with Chad. TE is so cool when it's constructive. When I see it in you guys, it's very orderly, in like a mindful kind of way. I know all of your rooms are probably messy, so yeah. But besides that, no, it's cool. You have a really fascinating stacking, and I appreciate all of you.
Okay, Mirabelle, any questions? Any comments?
For Caitlin,
Oh.
what is the name of your dog?
Oh, Jessica.
Well, they're beautiful, and actually before I joined this, I was looking up INFP stereotypes, and I came across this one acrostic that says, I need 4 puppies. So I'm like, it's interesting how the only person who showed their dog was an INFP. Yeah, I'm done.
She's a papillon, so it's like French for butterfly ears, and only her ears don't stand straight up, they just kind of like curve down. But you. We named her after someone that my mom didn't like. So to kind of get the name through the family to where it wasn't as bad as saying like a bad word or something like that. So now we just kind of accepted it.
All right, so I'm going to wrap this up, but I will say this, just so you guys know, any viewers watching this particular video, it's important to notice that how we've done all the NFs now. We've walked through the INFJ, the ENFJ, the ENFP, and the INFP, and you can see the different communication vibe that's in the room. You can feel different vibes, and if you don't remember the other combos, look at it. You can see that there's every conversation with different types has a different feel to it. And you're like, oh, now I can see this kind of the mood that it sets because of these person's preferences, and kind of that's what we're trying to identify here. And we're going to show you that there is a common theme associated with type, and it's not always related to behavior, but it's the way of communicating, and that's really important. And so if you go back and look at the other discussion videos, you're going to see that the mood is different, especially if you compare like ENFP and INFP. Okay. So the ENFP discussion, if I trail back a little bit, was based around humor. And it was kind of out of control. And it was indicative of extroverted intuition, because that's a dominant function of ENFP. It kind of took the whole thing and threw it haywire. Whereas if you look at the INFP, it's very centered on beliefs. You know, very centered on what I feel. Very centered on the way I see the world, the perspective of it. You know, what I've contrived from it. So it's getting down to the very answers, and it's a lot more concise, and it's a lot more, has a different feel to it. Not that one's better or worse. It's just you can see that dominant function playing a role in the way that people communicate, and what function's being extroverted, and what function is being demonstrated. And that's really, really important when you identify what person you're talking to. Like Mirabelle said earlier, how do I find out people's type? Well, you have them take the official Myers-Briggs instrument with a certified practitioner is how you find out people's type. And that's the best way to do it. Now, you can ask, and they may go on 16 personalities or whatever, and they may take a little test, but that's not always accurate because they have their own biases. And then people tend to have confirmation bias. They think they're a certain way, and they identify it with it. Like most men will come out as T because that's what society promotes. Okay? But it doesn't mean it's true. It doesn't mean doesn't mean they don't make value-based decisions. So it's important that we identify those things and not try to assume stereotypes when we're working with any type, regardless of what the type is. And as you can see here, these INFPs, they really did, they took a huge leap getting on public, and we have over 2,000 subscribers on this channel at this exact time. And so they're really, putting themselves out there for a lot of people to see, and that gives my applause to them and my appreciation for their ability to step forward and really, volunteer to, contribute to MBTV and our purpose of kind of showing that all types have their value in the world. And that's important for people to recognize that. So people who are commenting about, on my other videos about, F types that are a waste of space and oxygen or whatever, and they suck in business, and all this stuff needs to get out of here, And I won't tolerate it on my channel anymore. There's a point and a time and a place, but people learn to stretch and grow. And when you get into human ideals, it's important. And I did a call earlier, not to go on a long rant because I don't want to go on a long rant, but I did a call earlier, and I said that people tend to discard the human element when it comes to things, and if you do that, you're making a very grave mistake. You're making a grave mistake because ultimately humans is what keeps things going. Even in business, you employ individuals, you work with people. If you can't create a culture, then you're missing out. You're losing. Okay, and the culture comes from being able to recognize humans are not objects. And that's the challenge that, T-types struggle with, is that we see people as objects, and so we can just be blunt and be brash and be questioning, and that can actually off-put people. And because, again, it's seeing people a certain way, so we struggle with being able to relate in a lot of ways to that. And we tend to follow textbook protocol when it comes to interaction, where INFP becomes a lot more natural. They may be a little more reserved because they prefer introversion, but ultimately that conversation piece can become a little more natural for them. They may feel a connection once it's there. And so you got to realize that every type has its struggle, and I'm not condoning any type of biases towards any type, and so it's important that we demonstrate this. That being said, I am going to say that if you haven't joined the forum, you need to. There's a lot of stuff on there. If you have questions, it's a good way to get started and get involved in the community and be part of Myers-Briggs TV, and to really just jump in the MBTV community and see, oh wow, this is the way we're doing it. This is the community that we're creating. We're doing it right. It's no longer about, I'm on this particular website, and I'm on this forum, and they're talking about this person's not an ISTP because this person he writes a to-do list, so he can't be an ISTP. We're getting rid of those biases, okay? That's the whole point of MBTV. That's the purpose, is to be able to clear that up so you actually can learn to be a better and more effective communicator instead of holding on to biases. Because truth is, if you're holding on to biases, you're limited. Okay, and that's you limiting yourself. So it's on you. And as far as this particular broadcast, once it stops, it's going to continue. Whoever wants to stay on, Daniel may stay on, Mirabelle may stay on. Anybody can join. I'm going to post a link on the Slack chat. If you're not on Slack, that's your loss. Okay, so that link is going to be on there, and you guys can join this, and you can communicate with other people that are here. Obviously, are some of our guests that are here. If they choose to stay on, you can feel free to communicate with them. That link will be public on Slack in the next 5 minutes, and I will post it. That being said, Trey may have some closing comments, and so Trey, do you have anything to say?
Yeah, thank you so much, everyone, for coming on the call. I really appreciate it. I really appreciate all the participation and perspective and all that. And you know what? It was just really great talking about INFPs, because I have a special place in my heart for INFPs, and my ENTJ heart, which is barely existent and extremely cold, but it's there. So. Thank you so much for joining the call.
All right, guys. Appreciate you INFPs joining us, especially Olivia, because she is being the midnight soldier. I guess it's like, what, 3 or 4 your time now?
It's almost 4, and I think I'm going to go straight to sleep after this.
Yeah, she needs to sleep. So thank you, Olivia, for joining us, and everybody else. I will release an email. If you haven't joined our email list, go to this website, mbtvcoach.com. You will see a join our mailing list if you wish to be involved or get involved in the way that our live schedule works. Join that list, and I will keep you updated with any forum updates, any competitions. You can enroll in these competitions, and you can win prizes. So make sure you're doing that. Just get involved and get new information, and get the actual stuff, not some stuff that someone else wrote that doesn't make any sense, because that's what you get out there. You read descriptions online, and you're like, that's not me. Oh, that's not me, because they're all generally biased. Okay, so I can give you the real stuff from Myers-Briggs, and then I can send that to you, so you're like, oh, that's how it works. So get involved, because you'll get free books and free PDFs and things. So it's really important that you interact on that. Now, thank you guys, and hope that you continue to participate in MBTV. I appreciate your viewership, and we will all see you soon. Take care.